It is a new day in America. We are covering the presidential inauguration, and we're joined by some of our In Focus panelists to talk about some of the Indiana influence, some of the Hoosier storylines involved today. With me today, former GOP Communications Director Pete Seat, who also spent time working in the Bush White House, Abdul-Hakim Shabazz from IndyPolitics.org, Rima Shahid with Women for Change Indiana, and Lara Beck, Democratic strategist. Thank you all for being here. Lara, I'll start with you. Your reflections on this day as we inaugurate a new president in the midst of some very unprecedented circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, Dan. It's nice to be with everybody this morning and to be in such good company, first of all. Yeah, it is. There are so many historic elements, ranging from the fact that 2 weeks ago, the site of the swearing in was the site of a violent insurrection where people died. So you have that juxtaposition of the two, but it is also a really unique opportunity in this country for unity, frankly. And I think we're going to see some of that today, especially with the Pence family, Vice President Pence and Mrs. Pence being a part of the inaugural ceremony and being there, and their presence. And the fact that so many of the Republicans in Congress and leadership went to Mass with Joe Biden this morning. That speaks volumes. And I think it's an opportunity to turn the page. But I think we also can't forget where we're coming from, or the fact that last night, we marked 400,000 deaths with a public ceremony in this country. And I think that that is all going to be a part of this coming in today. But there's an opportunity here to move forward and to turn the page.
Pete, let's talk about unity. Will we see that today, do you think? And let's talk about some of those moments. You have Mitch McConnell there at the church service with the Bidens today, the vice president. The current vice president will be there at the inauguration. He was not there at President Trump's send-off this morning. What do you make of some of those moments and some of those potential nods toward unity on this inauguration day?
Yeah, there will be plenty of those photogenic moments of unity, as there usually are at this once every 4-year tradition, this peaceful transfer of power that I think we need to acknowledge just how blessed we are as a country to be able to experience this. A lot of places I've traveled to around the world do not have a peaceful transfer the way we do, January 6th aside, of course. But I think we'll see what President Biden ultimately says. I think he will speak a lot to unity and trying to heal the country. But we all need to want to be healed in order for him to be successful. And I'm not convinced that all Americans are there. And that goes for both sides of the aisle. We are all obsessed with this era of outrage that we have been living in for far too long. And that goes before Donald Trump becoming president, even before him becoming a candidate for president. So we all need to take time to reflect on how we engage in politics, how we engage in community and society, if this president is to be successful in unifying the country.
Rima, a lot of talk today also about the new vice president. This is a historic moment. The first female vice president, the first vice president, first Black vice president, first vice president of Asian descent as well. What are your thoughts on this historic inauguration day?
I am so excited. I'm wearing my pearls today in honor of Vice President Harris. And I'm so excited for my daughters. I'm so excited for my son. I'm so excited for the next generation. America, we're almost 250 years old, which means almost 2.5 centuries of vice presidents that were males and all white. And so this is a new day. This is the opportunity for America, and as we're seeing with the new administration, for our cabinet, for our country, for the administration to really truly look like Americans. My children are so blessed to be in this great nation. My daughter was born soon after the inauguration of former President Barack Obama, the first Black president. And now they will be living in America where we have a female vice president. How exciting to continue to break that glass ceiling. And as we're talking about other countries, yes, we are blessed to be in a nation where there's a peaceful transfer of power. But let us also remember that there are many nations that have had female heads of states, and we're yet to see one here in the United States of America after 2.5 centuries of our existence. So this is exciting. I think this is great. And while we're speaking of unity, I also think it's unfortunate that almost in 2 hours, former President Trump and former First Lady broke tradition and did not have the incoming president and Dr. Biden as other presidents have. And we have not seen this in modern day history. And I think that this is, I agree with Pete, I think this is a moment for reflection and what does unity look like and what is the right thing to do.
And as we've all been saying, Abdul, that puts Vice President Pence in a very prominent and ceremonial role where he is, in essence, perhaps taking the role of the outgoing administration and being the one to usher in the new administration by being there in person. And we certainly have seen a lot of interesting developments involving the vice president here over the last few days. He'll be coming back to Indiana later today. What are your thoughts on how Vice President Pence has navigated this very unprecedented situation here in the midst of a very difficult time in our country?
Well, I have to give the vice president credit where credit is due. January 6th, during the riots and the upheaval in Washington, D.C., the vice president was basically in command and control. It was him that made sure the National Guard was there. It was him that basically did his job as vice president, telling the president, no, I can't delay the vote because I don't have the constitutional authority to do it. And say what you will about Mike Pence, at the end of the day, Mike Pence is a true and a real American in this case, in this situation. I think it's interesting that he's staying there for inauguration today, which is showing that he's a grown-up in the room. And then he's coming back home, to Columbus later this afternoon, to thank the well-wishers. Then he and Karen are probably going to go take a vacation for a while before he goes to become a radio talk show host and write a book.
Well, Lara, see, Abdul's got it all laid out for him there. We'll see if he runs for president one day or not. Obviously,
well, actually, the rumor is he's supposed to take over the Rush Limbaugh show. That's what I've been hearing. So,
which is a great platform if he does want to run for office, perhaps. But obviously, a lot of dynamics, obviously, politically moving forward from everything we've experienced these last few weeks. Lara, what else will you be watching for today?
I'll definitely be watching the Pence family. I don't know Mrs. Pence personally, but I had the extreme privilege to work for Maggie Kernan when she was First Lady of Indiana. And Karen Pence has been nothing but gracious and kind to Mrs. Kernan, and same with the Vice President as well. Very, very kind to them. I think they are definitely people, again, say what you will about them. I probably don't agree on most things with them politically, but they have deep respect and reverence for the history of the offices they're in, and for the relationships that you forge on both sides of the aisle, particularly during campaigns. And I was able to see just how gracious Mrs. Pence has been with Mrs. Kernan. And so I'll be watching them because the insurrection and the events leading up to it put them in such a position where what they believe in terms of what I believe in terms of how you serve your country was challenged so much. And when you think that their lives and the life of their family was put at risk during the riots and during the insurrection, and I think it was like 60 seconds and 100 feet away, the rioters were from them. So when you put all of that into context, what they're doing today is a way to show that they believe in the democracy is continuing, and they can leave with their heads held high.
We're watching some of the dignitaries begin to arrive at the Capitol as we talk with you all. Pete, what do you make of the fact that the vice president was not at the president's send-off this morning? He said it was a logistical challenge to be in both places. Perhaps some might suggest a vice president could be able to get to both places if he wanted to be. Do you read anything into that? The president, by the way, did briefly thank the VP in those remarks this morning, we should point out as well.
Well, keep in mind, it's not just Mike and Karen Pence that travel as a couple. They come with an entourage. He is still vice president of the United States. There's a motorcade involved, there's security involved, there's media involved, there's staff involved up until he is no longer in office. So it certainly could be a logistical challenge. Having been part of the team that did those logistics for a former president, I speak from experience, but I just want to add too, I'm not going to just be watching the Hoosiers who are leaving the stage, but the Hoosiers who are coming.
Some big names coming in. That's right.
Yes. And, you know, you've got Mike Pence leaving the White House, Ron Klain coming in as chief of staff, Alex Azar leaving as Secretary of Health and Human Services, Pete Buttigieg, if he is nominated, coming into transportation, Seema Verma leaving Medicare and Medicaid, and Janet McCabe going to be the deputy at the Environmental Protection Agency. So it's really exciting. There's a lot of historical moments here, but as a Hoosier, it's exciting to see one group of Hoosiers leave and another group come in.
Senator Young, in fact, will introduce the former South Bend mayor at his confirmation hearing tomorrow. Pete, I'm going to stick with you for a moment because I remember the inauguration very well 4 years ago. It was very different. We were there covering it in person. That doesn't lend itself with this current situation with the pandemic, but the inaugural ball that happens, the Indiana ball, I remember running into you there. That's an event, a bipartisan event that happens before every inauguration where a lot of people from across the state of Indiana involved in politics gathered there, and all 50 states have these inaugural balls. There are balls all across town. This inauguration is just very different in terms of the things that simply can't take place as normal this year.
Yeah, and I was all dressed up in my fancy pants that night.
I remember that, yes.
You know, with a lot of great Hoosiers. And, you know, what I remember most distinctly is not just the bipartisan nature of that event, but going back to the word we're all using here, blessed that we have had two living individuals who have served as vice president of the United States. And you had Mike Pence, who had just taken office that evening, and you had Dan Quayle, of course, who served the first President Bush 41 in office. And to be amongst that collection of people who served Dan Quayle and who went on to serve Mike Pence was a really, really special evening. And of course, seeing you too, Dan.
Well, of course, that was seeing you in the fancy pants was a highlight, no doubt. Dan Quayle, by the way, will be at the inauguration today as well. Rima, your thoughts on some of these Hoosiers that Pete mentioned that will be a part of this new administration? Former Mayor Buttigieg will be the transportation secretary, if confirmed. Ron Klain, an Indianapolis native, as chief of staff. These are some influential Hoosiers in some pretty influential positions.
I'm so excited, and I think we can all go back to the famous quote from forgetting his name now, the Hoosier author that we all love.
Yeah.
Yes, that there are great Hoosiers. For Kurt
What-
Vonnegut, he's so amazing. It's
Yeah.
on the tip of my tongue. But there are Hoosiers, when you see great things, there are Hoosiers everywhere. And I think that really speaks to the fact I am so excited with the youngest, if confirmed, cabinet member, Mayor Pete. And I think that he was onto something when he had with the title of his book. He knew at that time where he was going. And back to science and the environment and the climate with Dr. McCabe, I'm really excited. This also, as we're speaking of first, with the first Latina on the Supreme Court confirming the first female vice president, what a moment, what a historic moment. And that's really going to be something that we carry. This is also going to be the first rescue pet going into the White House. So this is definitely an administration full of firsts. This is exciting times. And I'm just really excited for all the incoming Hoosiers and thankful for all the outgoing Hoosiers.
We'll see Justice Sotomayor up there, who, Pete, I know as a baseball fan, you will know, helped end the baseball strike back in the lockout back in the 90s. Abdul, I'll leave it to you here for some final thoughts on this inauguration day. A day like no other, as we just passed the 400,000 mark of people who've sadly lost their lives to this pandemic, and that's not just a number. Those are real people, and you know that all too well. Sadly, we have seen a lot of struggle in this country. What will this new day represent in terms of the struggle we're all enduring right now in the midst of this pandemic?
Well, I think the inauguration is, and I think it's interesting that the inauguration also happened the same week as Martin Luther King Day. And I think what it does is it gives us all an opportunity to sort of maybe just do a reset. Now, granted, there are going to be people on the far left and the far right who won't get it, who are happy with chaos going on. But I think this is a chance for us to come together. Like I said, when Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy went to church this morning with Joe Biden, it was symbolic, yes, but also it's a sign that, hey, you know what? The noise is over, the shouting is over. We have some serious issues in this country. We have a pandemic we have to get through. We have an economy we have to get back on track. We have to take care of our teachers, education, our roads, our infrastructure, our foreign policy, which is still a big issue as well. And I think today is a chance to just sort of kind of wipe the slate clean and start all over again. There'll be plenty of time for fighting. There'll be plenty of time for disagreements, which is a good thing because that's how we make things happen in this country. We disagree. We do it civilly, we do it peacefully, and we don't act like total buttheads when we do it as well. So I'm just saying, folks. Just saying.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So,
we'll
so
have
I think it's an opportunity for us to come together as Americans. Like I said, there's no red America, blue America today. It's just one America.
And we'll have you all back on for those civil disagreements and hope that 4 years from now, we can see Pete in his fancy pants at the inaugural ball and gather together to opine on all things happening in our state and our country. Pete, Rima, Abdul, Lara, thank you all so much for being with us today on this inauguration day. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.